Good afternoon and welcome to the 10th annual Black Women's Roundtable, Women of Power Virtual National Summit, Rebuilding Hope, Justice, Equity, and Equality. We will be starting momentarily. Thank you so much for joining. We're still waiting for a few attendees to join us as we're getting ready to reconvene. We will be with you momentarily. Again, thank you so much for being here for our summit. Good afternoon, everyone. It is our pleasure and our honor to let us now welcome Melanie L. Campbell, President and CEO of the NCBCP, convener, Black Women's Roundtable. Let us now receive her as she comes virtually.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, ladies. I hope you had a great inspiration, long break. And so glad you're back with us for the last two sessions for our first day of a 5-day summit, the Black Women's Roundtable Women of Power Summit. As you all who know, we had some technical issues with technology, and so we had to recalibrate a bit. And so we thought it was very important that you hear fully the message that we received from Ambassador Susan Rice, who is the director for the Domestic Council for the White House. And so we want to make sure that you hear from her. So I'm going to read again her, actually to talk a little bit about what we wanted to say to her earlier. And so I'll start again. As it has for the past 7 years, a pillar of our summit has been the release of our BWR report that provides an in-depth assessment of the challenges Black women face, as well as the triumphs. Policy and legislation is the reward that comes for power building. That is why we are here today. It is how we hold power to account. It is why we organize, and it is how we improve the lives of our communities and ensure that change is lasting. The issues that underpin the work we will do over these next 5 days are ones that will have a direct impact on our material conditions and lived experiences for ourselves, our families, and generations to come. So having Ambassador Susan Rice, who serves as the Assistant to the President and Director, Domestic Policy Council for the White House, we know the Black Women's Roundtable is very, very keenly aware that one of the number one issues that Black women and Black people are concerned about, no matter age, is the issue of racial justice in this country. And we know that the Biden-Harris administration has racial equity as a core pillar. And so we know the role that Ambassador Rice is playing, and her team and the administration sees how critical that is, and that the issue around COVID-19 and having equity as it relates to that, how important that is, and looking at how it impacts race and gender. And also the third top issue for Black women that told us in our polling was criminal justice and policing reform. And there's so many things about our lives that at the intersectionality, if you will, around these issues. So it is my honor and my pleasure and my privilege to have remarks from Ambassador Susan Rice.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to join this summit and have the opportunity to speak with you. It's a true privilege to get to share space with the amazing women leaders represented here today. Thank you to the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation for the invitation. The Black Women's Roundtable is so vital in these times. Events like this help us recognize our own power, reflected in the stories of others. They also remind us that we can only do so much alone. We all need a group of sisters to push us and lift us up along the way. I want to say a particular word of thanks to Melanie Campbell. Melanie, your leadership is unparalleled, and your tireless service and advocacy have done so much to elevate the voices and stories of Black women. Any table shared with Melanie is a power table. She is a force to be reckoned with. Thank you for creating the space to bring us all together. It's a unique time to reflect on the strength and power of Black women. In many ways, the COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated the depths of our resilience. Despite huge pain and loss, despite overwhelming obstacles, Black women continue to get the job done, putting food on tables, leading major companies, making medical breakthroughs, winning elections, and reaching new heights of creativity, all in the shadow of a global pandemic. And yet, it's impossible to ignore the devastating impact of COVID-19. Black Americans are almost twice as likely to die from COVID than white Americans. Nearly 1 in 10 Black Americans is currently unemployed. An estimated 40% of Black-owned businesses have closed because of the pandemic. And roughly 1 in 5 Black households are struggling with food insecurity. You can't fix structural inequity with one-size-fits-all policies. President Joe Biden knows this. He made clear from the start that equity was going to be at the center of his agenda. As his domestic policy advisor, I have had the privilege of helping execute that agenda across the entirety of our government. We have assembled a first-rate team to drive this effort forward and hit the ground running. On day one, President Biden signed an executive order directing each federal agency to embed racial equity across its policies and programs. There is tremendous support throughout the administration to ensure that we enact changes that match the urgency of this moment. The American Rescue Plan, which the President signed into law just 2 weeks ago, is all about meeting the needs of this moment. The $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan will help us defeat the virus, safely reopen our schools, and build back better. But the rescue plan is more than just a response to COVID-19. It's a generational investment in communities that for too long have been overlooked and left behind. The American Rescue Plan will boost the income of millions of workers, including 2.7 million Black workers, through expansions of the Earned Income and Child Tax Credits. The vast majority of direct payments and tax credits in the plan go to families making less than $90,000 a year. To address the lack of quality health care across communities of color, the American Rescue Plan expands community health centers and invests $20 billion in improving vaccine equity so that our communities receive the public health response they deserve. It also expands subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. 4 out of 5 enrollees will soon be able to find a plan for $10 or less per month. Tell everyone you know now is the time to head to healthcare.gov and get covered. The American Rescue Plan will drive capital to minority-owned and small businesses in underserved areas through a dedicated Small Business Opportunity Fund, seeded with an initial $10 billion. This crucial assistance will help Black businesses that have struggled so mightily during the pandemic. And this is on top of more than $50 billion that will expand the Paycheck Protection Program and provide aid and support to small businesses across the country. The American Rescue Plan lifts up our families, providing $40 billion in direct assistance to reduce child care costs and expand access to affordable early childhood education. It also incentivizes higher wages and better benefits for child care workers, 40% of whom are women of color. In total, the American Rescue Plan is projected to cut poverty for Black families by more than 1/3. Across the nation, it will cut child poverty in half by the end of 2021, a direct investment in our nation's future. Everyone here who showed up to the polls, who organized their friends and neighbors, who made sure every voice was heard and every vote counted, you helped make this happen. Thank you. Thank you. The American Rescue Plan is the foundation of an equitable recovery, but there's so much more work to do. We're witnessing an unprecedented assault on the right to vote. We face an uphill battle to pass even overwhelmingly popular gun safety laws. We continue to seek justice for George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and too many others who have lost their lives at the hands of law enforcement. We must see the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act become law. Make no mistake, the path before us is long and it's difficult. But my pledge to you is that we will not shy away from these challenges. We will continue to make the federal government accountable for advancing equity for families across America. From Reconstruction to the Civil Rights era to the 2020 election, Black workers, families, and voters, especially Black women, have never stopped pushing this country forward and demanding that we live up to our highest ideals. May their struggle, our struggle, galvanize us. May their perseverance inspire us, and may their courage embolden us to keep marching forward as we continue this vital work together. Thank you.
Now, at this time, we will have the Biden-Harris administration Women Leaders in Public Policy briefing. It will be led by our moderator, Jocelyn Tate, who serves as the Senior Policy Advisor for the NCBCP BWR. Also joining us today, we have 4 panelists. Our first panelist is Carissa J. Smith, who serves as the Senior White House Office of Public Engagement. Our second panelist is Anahia Mejia, who serves as the Deputy Director of the Women's Bureau at the U.S. Department of Labor. Our third panelist serving today is Natalie Cofield. She serves as the Assistant Administrator for the Office of Women's Business Ownership at the Small Business Administration. And our fourth panelist joining us today is Sharice Perry, who serves as the Senior Advisor for the COVID Equity Task Force at the Department of Health and Human Services. Now at this time, we welcome all of our panelists along with our moderator to now join and to turn on their cameras at this time.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We welcome you for joining us today for our 10th annual BWR Black Women's Roundtable National Summit. And I'm here today with a phenomenal group of women from the Biden administration, As they mentioned, Sharice, Analia, Natalie, and Carissa, I'm sorry, Analia, Natalie, and Sharice. So we want to get right into the meat of the conversation. Ladies, thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedules to join us today. And I'd like to kick off with asking you all one very important question. What are your department's or office's top line policy priorities for the Biden-Harris administration?
Hi, everybody. Carissa J here from the Office of Public Engagement. I serve as a senior advisor, specifically overseeing women and girls, health and education. I'll get us started and round robin it to my great colleagues and sisters who joined me today from the administration. I would say firstly, in the Office of Public Engagement, which is led by Congressman Cedric Richmond, a big point for us is really inclusiveness and diversity. A lot of our outreach is about building the coalition that we saw on the campaign. Got to give special kudos to Melanie Campbell. We wouldn't be in the White House if it wasn't for a lot of the work that she did on the ground for us, especially when it comes to Black women. But we did build out such a robust and diverse coalition that essentially has propelled us into what we do now in the Office of Public Engagement. You know, in our office specifically, we have colleagues of mine who oversee these different and diverse and unique voices in different coalition groups. And we make sure that all of those equities are at the table. Even in this moment, as we're in the pandemic, you know, we're considering COVID equity and working with Sharice Perry. We're working with Analilia, we're working with Natalie so all of it is a very interagency lens to make sure that no one is left behind. And we're using this approach across the board. And I know my colleagues will share some more of that, of what they're doing. And we all have this central focus of this is the time for us to be progressive. This is the time for us to be proactive. And this is the time to make sure that we can get things done. We just saw the American Rescue Plan pass, which is considered one of the most progressive legislation packages that has ever gone through. And so we're really grateful. And all of us can speak to the good that the American Rescue Plan is going to do for each of our communities. I know Ambassador Rice, as you just heard, outlined some key top lines, but there's so much in there. And I encourage you to check out the whitehouse.gov/American Rescue Plan, and you could read the full plan. So I'll turn it over to some of my colleagues who may want to share as well what they're prioritizing, but I know all of us are prioritizing putting us at the table and making sure voices are heard from diverse coalitions.
Absolutely. And Chris, if you don't mind, I'll jump in here. My name is Natalie Madeira Cofield, and I have the honor of serving as the Assistant Administrator leading the Office of Women's Business Ownership at the U.S. Small Business Administration. I think as we have all gone through the COVID pandemic, the Small Business Administration has really risen as an agency of importance to so many across the country through the distribution of billions of dollars in funds through the PPP lending program. When it comes to what the priorities of the agency are as it relates to the administration and what our priorities are in the office, I really want to just kind of share what the mission of the Office of Women's Business Ownership is, which is to empower and enable women entrepreneurs. And we are a voice for women entrepreneurship throughout the federal government. But another part of our mission, which is something that I think has not necessarily been touched on as much as it needs to, but we're looking forward to doing so during this particular administration, is working with women who are economically and or socially disadvantaged. That is actually in our mission, and it's in our mandate as the Office of Women's Business Ownership. And so I look forward to really elevating what that means for all of us. I think it goes without saying that Black and brown women are the fastest growing entrepreneurial segment for our nation. And so when we have conversations about women entrepreneurs, of the 12 million that we may be talking about, we're looking at about 3.9 million being led by women of color, and of those 1.5 million being led by Black women. And so any and all programs that are designed to support Black businesses, that are designed to support Black women, are aiding the Black community. I do want to make a couple of points about a few things, right? So part of this is sharing the information on resources that exist. We can do better when we know. and we are eligible for so many things that many people are not even aware of. So right now, if you have been impacted by COVID-19 with your business, many people are aware of PPP. Many people thought that they were not eligible for the PPP lending program because their business was not large enough or they were a sole proprietor. I would like to let you know, not only has the program been extended to May, or will be extended to May 31st soon, but it has also been extended in the way it's been rolled out from the Small Business Administration with a particular lens and focus on inclusivity. So what does that mean? When it was rolled out again for the second wave, it was primarily and singularly focused on businesses that had less than 20 employees, for which we know Black-owned businesses fit squarely into that space. It was distributed through community development financial institutions, for which we know, and we have seen the data that shows that they have a higher propensity to invest in and to support Black-owned businesses. And so we are now, again, also looking at things like ensuring that people who may have student loan debt do not are not disqualified from being able to access PPP loans. People who may not necessarily have a social security number can use a tax identification number. That may impact our African descendant diasporatic community, immigrant community. We want to make sure that anyone who is eligible that is a business owner in the U.S. And needs this funding can get access to it. And then a couple of other programs that are now coming out as well, which is the Economic Injury and Disaster Loan Program. As of April 6th, this is very important. The amount of money that will be eligible for a small business owner to go after has gone from $150,000 to $500,000 over the course of a 24-year time period. Okay, so that has literally tripled the amount of economic injury disaster loan funds that are available to businesses. And if they are available to businesses, they are available to Black businesses. We just need to know that the funds are available. And then lastly, the Shutter Venues program. That is a $16.5 billion funded program to support the hard-hit entertainment industry. We have a number of Black creative entrepreneurs, from producers to museum operators. And these are, again, entrepreneurs who are eligible for funding that is coming from the Small Business Administration. We just need to continue to do what we're doing today, which is share more about this information. I don't want to keep going on, but I know when it comes to what we're doing for COVID, the business community wants to hear where the funding is and how to get access to it. So I do just want to make sure that I share this critical information with our community so that we can get on board with this. And if we need it, that we can go after it. And the last thing I'll say here is, you know, the president signed on his first day an executive order on advancing racial equity. And I am also a part of the Small Business Administration's internal team looking at what we're doing internally and externally related to diversity and inclusion. And I think from the folks that you're hearing from on this panel, you should know that you are in good hands with women who care about our community and care about the economic vibrancy of this country. So thank you.
So I'm going to, if you don't mind, can I jump right in right after?
Sure.
Because,
Sure.
You know, she made mention a couple of things that I can flag at DOL. We're also very focused on. First and foremost, you know, we share, Natalie and I share a passion and a focus on making sure that we're uplifting, that we're targeting all of our communities, but that there is a special impact that our entire economy, that our entire system can have when you specifically target Black families and Black women. We know at the DOL, our chief economist has said this several times, that when you uplift Black women, you in fact impact positively and uplift our entire economy. Why? Because we have, unfortunately, due to sexism, due to racism, we have Black women being channeled into disproportionately low paid work, disproportionately unprotected work. And when we are targeted about uplifting that community, we will have a positive impact across the board. At the Women's Bureau, we're one of the few agencies across US government that is specifically mandated by Congress to work exclusively on the issues that impact women in the workplace and to represent the needs of wage earning women in public policy, in government, through the government process. For over 100 years now, the Women's Bureau has served as a trusted source for research, for data, for statistics, advocacy, innovation, for working women on the issues that they care most about. We're very focused on making sure that we carry out the diversity and the equity mandates coming out of the White House, not only because obviously it's a priority of the administration, but for myself as the deputy of the Women's Bureau, for the women that work, the women and men that work in our department and across the Department of Labor, we feel heavily invested in uplifting our communities. We want to make sure, so what steps have we taken to make sure that when we are tackling the issues of working people, that we are taking special note of how to positively impact Black women in our workforce? We're ensuring, as we look at research and policy analysis across the Department of Labor, that we're taking a special look at what's impacting the community, what policies need to be changed, what specific areas or sectors need to be addressed so that, again, we uplift Black women, we uplift our entire economy. We're taking special interest in making sure the Women's Bureau has an ability to make grants to different organizations, institutions across the country. We are taking a special look to make sure that those grants are being implemented in a way that not only identify positive making decisions, positive policy making decisions, but that we are also looking at ways in which we could scale up so that we're not just impacting the 10 people that are able to benefit from one program in one city, but rather scale it across and identify ways in which we could impact all workers. Finally, I'll say, you know, I've personally only been in government for 6 weeks, but I know, just looking at the hundreds of career staff in the Department of Labor, my colleagues that have joined this administration, you know, we want to ensure that we are building. We're building not only a government that's representative, but a policy plan that actually works. And the first step for us has been and will continue to be to listen from those who are doing the work on the ground, to take their counsel and advice on what not to recreate the wheel, in terms of making sure that not only are we, you know, using the levers of government to positively impact people, but also making sure that we're communicating with folks on all of their rights and all of the opportunities that are already before them. So Natalie talks about making sure, you know, that we are sharing information with those that are here, that we would be derelict in our duties if we didn't do it. We at the Women's Bureau, at the Department of Labor, we definitely want to hear from you. If you have thoughts, if you have ideas on how government can better communicate with our communities, if there are levers that you want to make sure that we're aware of that help distribute information in a more effective way, then we want to hear from you. So if you have an interest in communicating with the Women's Bureau, we'll make sure to communicate through not only Joycelyn, forgive me, and Melanie, so that we have an open line of communication and we best serve all people, but specifically, you know, those who are most impacted in our economy. Thank you.
And lastly, I would just say at the Department of Health and Human Services, I'm sure you all know we live, breathe, and all of our work right now is focused on COVID. There's nothing that we don't do that is working towards protecting the American people. So I know that we'll be talking about COVID throughout this conversation, but there are a couple of key things I just want to make sure that folks are aware of. You know, first and foremost, particularly when it comes to vaccination, we can't urge people to do it if we don't have enough vaccine. Yes. So one of our charges has been this increase in supply. So I'm sure that you've seen Since the president and the vice president have taken office, we've had a third vaccine added to our cohort, right? Johnson & Johnson, along with Pfizer and Moderna. And you've seen the president make several announcements over the last few weeks, some very historic, right? We've never been in an environment where two competitors come together to work to produce a vaccine. So we've got partnerships between Johnson & Johnson and Merck, right, to produce that vaccine. We've increased supply of all three across the country, and we're making sure that the states are getting equitable amounts of each of those vaccines when they go out. I'm sure you all have also followed, we promised 100 shots in arms, and last week, happy to say that we crushed that goal. We met it on the 58th day. So we are continually working on making sure that folks not only have access to vaccine, but know where to go. The president and the vice president have talked a great deal about centering equity in this response. And, you know, for many of us, we know where your resources go is what your focus is on, right? And Carissa talked about some of the resources that have been designated under the American Rescue Plan. We've also seen grants come out of the Office of Minority Health at the Department of Health and Human Services a couple of weeks ago, $250 million before the American Rescue Plan, so that communities who are struggling could get some additional support, local governments, right, for contact tracing, for distributing vaccines, for prevention efforts. So I just want to highlight that. We have also made incredible gains in terms of the places where people can go to get vaccinated. In the first 3 weeks of this administration, we launched several different sites across the country where people could go, where we were sending federal allocations. Community health centers, our retail pharmacy program, our mobile vaccination units across the country, and then also our community vaccination centers. We've got, just last week, we actually announced that we were doubling the number of federally run mass vaccination centers that we have gotten our retail pharmacy program up to over 20,000 across the country. And we're continually increasing the funding community health centers where we know people trust their providers and they go to get accurate information and high quality care. Lastly, I'd be remiss if I did not mention the Health Equity Task Force. When the president, he signed a proclamation to establish this task force, and our charge over the next 2 years is to really look at how we respond to crises like this in the future. So we've been charged to look at data. We're looking at how to equitably distribute relief funds in the future. We're looking at xenophobia and the structural barriers that we know that this pandemic didn't expose, it didn't illuminate for the first time the barriers, right, that folks have had to deal with. It only laid bare a lot of the entrenched disparities that we have dealt with for far too long. So we will be looking at that, and obviously other issues like culturally aligned communication and messaging and things like that. So our second Health Equity Task Force meeting, which will be doing a deep dive into equitable vaccine distribution, will be this Friday. Those meetings are public. So we invite you all to watch. You can go to hhs.gov/live to watch that meeting. Our subcommittees will be actually sharing their initial set of recommendations. So folks will be able to follow us over the course of the year to see what we're proposing. And we invite public comment. So please feel free to send those comments in beforehand or after the meeting if you have feedback. I'll stop there, but happy to discuss this more.
Thank you so much, Sharice. Carissa, I just want to follow up with you a little bit. In your role, you focus on making the White House inclusive and accessible to everyone. Yet, a lot of people across the country see the White House as an unapproachable place. And we have a lot of women attending our summit today from all across the country. So could you share with them some ways that the White House engages with people outside of Washington, and how they can engage with the White House as well?
Yes, excellent question, Joycelyn, and thank you for asking that. So a lot of what we do in the Office of Public Engagement is pretty much creating and coordinating that direct dialogue between the Biden-Harris administration and diverse American public. In this case, what I talked about, that diverse coalition and that momentum we had on the ground when it came to Build Back Better is what has propelled us now in these first almost 60 days, in this administration. We are very strategic in working with local, state, and national level to ensure community leaders, diverse perspectives, and new voices all have the opportunity to inform the work of the president. It's, why we're even here today, right? Like me and some of my colleagues, we want to make sure that we are reaching out to all of you who are doing this real work, who are doing this organizing day in and day out, and that you all know that there's an open door policy within the Office of Public Engagement and within the White House and beyond. It's very key that we create this, two-way dialogue between the administration and the communities across the nation. Many on this call and even outside, we've done this work of, we call on you all to know what's going on. We call on you all and rely on you all to tell us what's happening in your communities. So we're getting out the Beltway and we're not just staying in Washington, D.C. And so, that's really important. That's really the vision of the president and the vice president and Congressman Richmond when it comes to the Office of Public Engagement. And, we expect that the next 4 years, we're going to keep up this pattern and this rhythm of doing more conversations and dialogue like this. So you do feel accessible to the ones you voted for. And that's our key. And that's our job here.
Thank you for that. Natalie, I just want to go back to you. You spoke about the different programs that you have. Specifically, you were talking about the Disaster Loan Program Fund, and it's available, and the other programs that you mentioned as well. Could you tell what is the SBA doing in terms of outreach to make sure people know about these programs? Because we remember when the PPPs rolled out first, in the first rollout of coronavirus relief packages. A lot of people, particularly in the African American community, said that they didn't know about the funds. So what is the SBA doing to make sure that they're getting the word out there so that communities know that these funds are available?
Absolutely. So Joycelyn, first, my office funds 135 women's business centers in 135 cities across the country. These are places where women entrepreneurs should come to seek counsel, advisement, support with business plans, access to capital, access to contracting, and to your question, access to information about programs for which the Small Business Administration administers. So that's one. And that's just my office. Within the Office of Entrepreneurial Development, you have small business development centers, which are, there are about 64 of those throughout the states, throughout the United States. We have veteran centers, Native American centers, and also faith-based outreach that we do. But there's more to be done, right? And so we are excited that part of the American Rescue Plan included $100 million for a community navigators program, which is designed to support engagement with businesses through hubs and spokes that have, access to, connections to, engagement with minority communities, hard to reach communities, underserved communities, to ensure that they are aware of, have access to, and are knowledgeable about how to go about applying for these programs. So I think there's our existing infrastructure footprint, which should be mobilized intentionally. There is the Community Navigators program, which has been funded through the American Rescue Plan. And then there's just in general broader marketing and engagement with media outlets and organizations such as yours to get information out there about the small business programs that exist and to dispel the myth of some of the things that would keep us from otherwise being able to apply. And it requires people who have experience in entrepreneurship and business to really be able to do that.
Thank you so much. And I'm quite sure that information that you just gave is helpful to women out there that are looking for these women business centers that you just mentioned. Analia, you spoke about the scale up of the programs that you're doing at the Women's Bureau. How would people connect with you to find out about those programs?
So the WB, as I said, is really focused on making sure that we're amplifying the voice of working women, and that we're not only shining a light or drawing the connections so that people understand the impacts sexism has in the workplace, but also unpacking the data, making sure that it is reflective of what's happening to women of color, particularly Black women across our economy. So what we have tried to do broadly is to make sure that data that's coming out of the DOL is being made accessible to community partners, to advocates on the ground, so that they could use it to make their best case on how we actually have better employment outcomes for all women, particularly women of color. We also have what is called a WANTO grant, which is a grant that's focused on expanding opportunities for women in non-traditional workplaces or roles, specifically apprenticeship programs in labor, for example, in the building trades. We are very active in making sure that we are identifying or helping stakeholders on the ground not only access these grants, but taking the lessons learned and then pushing them out across various stakeholders, including within the DOL, so that if we know that building a program in a particular way, including certain stakeholders at the inception, in the end results in more women of color having higher earning opportunities, higher or better employment outcomes, we replicate that in other programs across our government. Our intention is just to be able to shine a light on help identify what works and be really targeted on, again, helping women of color have better outcomes, because we know, again, you impact working women, you impact their families, you impact the entire community in a very positive way.
Now, you mentioned the apprenticeship programs. Can you unpack that a little bit and tell us more about that? Because these programs are being used for people. Are they being used? Do you have to have any college for those programs, or are those programs available for people coming straight out of college? And how are these apprenticeship programs being used to launch people into viable careers?
So for example, in the trades, many of us know that an entryway into a skilled trade job or career are these apprenticeship programs. The way that they are recruiting people who eventually enter them, the way that they're being accessed or connected into the community, all of those choices at the front end have an impact on who ultimately participates, who ultimately gets the job. So what we have been doing at the Women's Bureau is working with different community partners to identify the ways in which we expand that access to women and women of color. If folks want to learn more about those WANTO grants, you could visit www.dol.gov/WB. We have information about our WANTO program there. We're also having different conversations about non-traditional apprenticeship programs. We're exploring this question of whether or not there could be an apprenticeship program that connects women who are in childcare, for example, who want to move up from direct worker to perhaps one day become a licensed provider. We're working on the ground trying to identify how that happens, what information needs to be shared, and then how do we expand it across the ether so that more people benefit from that knowledge and, again, have better employment outcomes.
Thank you. Because generally people do think of apprenticeship programs in the construction and electrician trade, but your apprenticeship programs are now more broad and they're going across different industries, and that's great. I love that.
Yeah, we're making every effort to do exactly that, to expand them, to rethink how we conceive an apprenticeship program works, because in the end, what is it about? It's about giving a particular person, a worker, the tools necessary to kind of launch themselves. So it doesn't just have to be in the building trades, it could actually happen in different spaces and places. And so we're exploring that and trying to be a resource to people to do exactly that.
Thanks so much for that. Sharice, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the very, you know, in the Black community, there's very valid historical reasons in the Black community for a level of skepticism and distrust about getting the COVID-19 vaccine as part of the federal government's vaccine process. What has been done to address this skepticism in the Black community regarding vaccines?
Well, you know, I think that's a great question. I think first and foremost, you know, the mistrust, the skepticism, it's well earned, right? And that needs to be acknowledged. And I think, you know, whether Dr. Nunez-Smith is speaking or whether it's someone else from our team, you know, I think it's important to ground any conversation there, right? And our community doesn't have to think back to Tuskegee and Henrietta Lacks. We can think about our own experiences, right? And the experiences of our families that we still encounter in the healthcare system. So I think, you know, in terms of our approach when it comes to skepticism, I think first and foremost, we try to ground everything that we do in science, right? So, you know, the vaccines were tested in large clinical trials. Diverse scientists were a part of every part of the process. And I think a lot of people don't know that, right? There were Black doctors that helped to develop the vaccine. There were Black clinical trials participants that were a part of these vaccine trials. There are Black people who are part of the ongoing monitoring that happens, right? After a vaccine gets to a certain point in development, you know, there's an independent body that has to review those findings. So every, you know, study, every phase of this, of each of these trials was carefully reviewed and approved by independent data and safety people. So, and then the federal government goes on to, you know, has a pretty robust monitoring system over time. So I think it's important to tell people that. We get a ton of questions on the speed in which, right, the vaccine was developed. You know, it was a question I had, right, when we first started hearing about this, and it's completely valid. Who wants to take something that you think was developed, you know, in just a year, right? But what people, I think we haven't always done the best job of communicating is that these vaccines are based on decades of research and trials. So it wasn't like we just started from scratch, right? In March of 2020, these vaccines were already in the works. So we always try to make sure that people understand that. You know, and then I think that we have to recognize that trust has to be rebuilt, right? Particularly the federal government side, right? We've just had a traumatic 4 years, right? So we have to do our part with words, right, and action. So that means being transparent, right, about how these vaccines were developed and what that looks like, but it also requires action. And a lot of that, you know, I just talked about a little while ago with access, right, because we have to make sure that once someone is ready, there's vaccine for them to take and a place for them to go get it, right?
Right.
So.
Right.
What we've been doing is making sure, you know, we do events like this. We are having stakeholder, I'm a senior advisor for Dr. Nunez-Smith as well, the Health Equity Task Force. So we are cognizant of making sure that every week she is talking to stakeholders. We're having smaller roundtables. We're talking to so many different communities about what this vaccine uptake looks like. You know, where are we doing well? Where do we need to improve? You know, there's an expectation that people hold us accountable in this process. We're kind of driving the cars, we're building it, right? But that's what we have to do because that's the situation that we're in. So we're doing stakeholder meetings just earlier today. She did we're doing live events. So she did a Sirius XM live with LL Cool J, Jazzy Jeff, and you know, Tony Fauci. And we got questions just like this. It was very cool, Ana Lilia. You would have loved it. But you know, one of the
so jealous.
That's where it was right before I came here. But you know, one of the questions LL asked was, Dr. Fauci, are you making money off of this? You know, Dr. Nunez-Smith, are you making money off of this? That's valid, right? Because I know people in my family have asked me that. So, you know, thankfully, all of the doctors that work for the federal government have to go through a lot of ethics clearance, and they cannot make any money off of these things. But we welcome those questions. Not necessarily being as confident in taking the vaccine, we want those questions. She does a ton of media. We're working a lot with faith leaders, doing a ton with groups like the Black Coalition Against COVID. She's done recently an event with TD Jakes, so we're bringing in faith leaders in the Black and Brown community, and doing a lot of briefings with lawmakers. We're constantly talking to governors and talking to mayors and talking to members of Congress, because we want everyone to have the latest information. So, we are doing our best to get out there. If folks have a request, they should feel free to send it over to me, because we obviously want to make sure that we're talking and communicating with the communities who are not only, who are doing this work. We want to know, how to do better. So the last thing I'll say is we will be rolling out a public education campaign. So that'll be another way that we work on educating the public. We'll be doing regional events, et cetera. But, I encourage the partners to reach out to us. If there's a forum in which you would like someone from the COVID team to come and answer those questions, because this is important. So it's a priority for us to make sure that there's ongoing engagement with the community.
Okay, we have women at this summit from all over the country that are listening to you right now, and they may want to be able to reach out to you. How would they get in contact with your office?
You can, I will give you all my email address. I will ask you give me a day or two to get back to you, because working with Dr. Nunez Smith, I have been inundated. But my email is my first name, which it looks like it's popped up right here, Sherice, SHERICE, my last name, Perry, PERRY @hhs.gov. So I invite you all to reach out, be in touch, please. If there's a deadline associated with your ask, make sure that's super clear. But we will do our best to get back to you, because we really do want to make sure that folks have the resources that they need to do all the amazing work that they're doing across the country. So.
Thank you so much for that. And thanks for sharing that email address. You'll probably get a ton of emails behind that to keep you busy. I do want to open it up to questions from our BWR Summit attendees, if they have any questions now. Let's see. I'm looking in the chat here. I don't see any. Okay. I'm going to ask correct me if I'm wrong. I don't see any questions, but are there any questions maybe on the forward-facing side of this platform that I may not see? So if so, I'm quite sure they'll let me know. But in the meantime, let's go back, and I wanted to ask a couple of more questions of the panelists. One question that I want to ask, that's more of a personal question, is you ladies are all very busy working in this policy space. How do you support each other? This is some very challenging work that you all are doing. So how do you support each other in this space? And Sherice, your mic is closed.
I started to jump in. Share, if folks have questions for the WB, you're welcome to email to questions-wb@dol.gov, and I'll make sure, Joycelyn, you and your team have that email. I will say, in terms of support, when you first mentioned you were going to ask us this, I started to think, I was like, how real do I want to be? I will be as real as it can get.
Okay.
So for starters, I've had the pleasure to work with Sherice, with Carissa, with other, just incredible just incredible women, both through the transition process. We all participated in the transition, but also, have had the ability to connect with each other in this space or in previous roles. First and foremost, we help each other out. We identify opportunities for each other. We like give each other a heads up that something is moving or happening. We encourage each other to not only bring our best to work, but to have the spirit to overcome how challenging it is to operate in this space. Imposter syndrome is real, and coupled with sexism and racism that, good, bad, or ugly rears its ugly head all the time, everywhere, not just in the workplace, but you go to the grocery store, you take your kids to the doctor, you go to the doctor yourself, and you may experience it. We give each other the strength, the encouragement to keep on moving. And I will admit that there have been people, perhaps in this panel, but most certainly across our network, that if I have to call and just, give them an earful and drop all of the angst that I maybe experienced through the day because this is hard work, or maybe cry and then get the pep talk I need to keep moving, I have them to do it. And then on a professional way, I could tell you that during this panel, I've been emailing Natalie and Charisse, like, hey, what are we going to do next? I just thought about this thing that we can do to best impact, our communities. So, we help each other out by being real, and by having like humanity for each other. And I'm so deeply grateful for it. So just wanted to share that. That's as real as it gets. And I am jealous, Charisse. Next time, can I please staff it? Can I help?
Okay. Anyone else want to jump in on that?
Yes.
And respond?
Yes, Ms. Tate, you do have a few questions that have been extended to you.
I see them.
Okay. There is a question that is from Mary. Mary would like to know if you could list the website for the meeting on Friday.
Oh, yes, that's the Health Equity Task Force meeting, our second meeting. You can go to hhs.gov/live. The meeting is from 12 to 3, so it's a pretty lengthy meeting. But we will be talking about equitable vaccine distribution, and the committee will be putting forward their first set of recommendations, initial recommendations. So again, hhs.gov/live. And if you Google Health Equity Task Force, the first meeting, you should be able to find it on YouTube. That meeting was on February 26th. This meeting is on March 26th, and all the subsequent meetings will be on that website live the last Friday of every month for the rest of the year. I will say we have a pretty aggressive schedule. We have 2 years, and Dr. Nunez-Smith is laser focused on getting this done as soon as possible. So we'll actually be meeting monthly when a lot of task force usually meet only a couple of times a year. So we're taking this very seriously and plan to get the job done pretty soon.
And someone did ask for your email address in the chat. So if you could give that email address, I told you they're going to keep you busy, Charisse. If you could give that email again.
Absolutely. My first name dot my last name at hhs.gov. So that's Charisse, SHERICE .Perry, PERRY @hhs.gov.
Okay, and also in the chat, I'll go. There's a question for small business. Is the small business support available to cooperatives?
Yes, the small business support is available to nonprofit organizations, religious institutions, sole proprietorships, LLCs, and different forms of businesses. I would, however, encourage you, it really kind of also depends on what the official structure of the co-op is. So are you co-op as a corporate board? What is the circumstance? I can't speak to that. I don't know all of the intricacies, but I would advise you to go to whatever particular program it is that you're interested in and find out what the eligibility requirements are there.
Okay, and we have another question. Let's see. How is, I just lost it. Oh, how is the this is for you, Cherise. How is the administration supporting vaccine equity and distribution outside of the country? And they're asking particularly the African continent.
Okay.
Do you have any information about that?
I would actually have to connect that person with our global affairs office. My primary focus is domestic vaccine distribution. So I'm happy to do that. If that person wants to follow up, feel free to send me a note and I'll get you over to the right people to answer that question. I'm sure that though that you all have seen that the president has talked quite a bit about what we're going to do with the excess vaccine, because we plan to obviously have more than what is needed right now. And he has discussed making sure that that gets to other places around the world. So I'm happy to follow up and get that person some additional details if they want to reach out.
Okay. And Natalie, this question is for you. Are there any mentoring opportunities for business owners in navigating online marketing and doing a pivot from retail store sales?
Yes, actually, we have an entire platform in our office called Ascent, which is a learning management platform for women entrepreneurs. And there are different journeys on it that include fireside chats, workbooks, information for business owners and women owners specifically. It's ascent.sba.gov, and it's totally a virtual platform. And you can learn about leadership, building a winning team, contracting, international business opportunities, COVID and economic disaster recovery, pivoting, marketing, all of the things that you need to run a successful small business.
Okay. And we have another question here. It's about, I think this is about home appraisals. I don't know if any of you would be able to address that, but how does the administration plan to address the historic banking and lending practices for higher interest rates for Black Americans?
I can't speak to it from the home ownership perspective because there's an entire agency focused on that. But I can speak to it from the perspective of PPP. Yeah, and on business, right? So one, PPP has just across the board 1% interest rate. That's what it is. It is designed to be a forgivable loan program. So insofar as you're using it for eligible costs, it should be forgiven. And then on top of that, I think because the SBA has worked with intermediaries and kind of is serving as a backer of these loan programs, the interest rates typically tend to be lower. And so again, I would encourage folks to learn more about the 504 program, the 7A program, the micro loan program. These are programs that are just for your business, regardless of whether there's an economic disaster or not. These exist and are housed within the SBA, supported and funded through intermediaries by the SBA. And so those funds do exist for you to succeed.
Great. Let's see, looking for other questions in the chat here. I don't see. Okay. Some of these questions are, I don't really don't know if you would be able to address them, but I do have a question myself. And this is just basically about the programs that you're offering at the SBA, and I'm quite sure they're all virtual at this point. The small bit, the women business centers, do they have kind of a bit of autonomy to kind of address the programs to the specific needs of maybe the communities that they're in? Like if there is a community, I mean, I know overall they have to, there are certain things they have to do, but specifically like maybe if you have more people from an immigrant community that are using your services? Would it be more tailored to address the specific needs of that immigrant community?
Yes, and in fact, our centers have conducted training, counseling, and advisement in 38 languages.
Oh, great.
So it really just depends on where someone is, the market and demographic of that particular community. Our goal at the SBA is one, that you're servicing women business owners, that you're connecting them to resources, you're connecting them to capital, and that we're creating jobs. The types of programs that you are designing to deploy those goals are really come down to the center and the way in which the center would like to approach that, understanding their community better. So that's again why I think that the Women's Business Center Network is very unique, and it's just so expansive. I mean, there's 135 of centers, including Puerto Rico. The only state that doesn't have one is Alaska. And so there are states that have multiple women's business centers as well, for example, like New Mexico. So yes is the answer to your question. And yes is also the answer to the question that you asked about, are some of these programs and services being provided virtually? Yes, they are. So many of the centers have actually pivoted, as all of us have, right? So I've been saying, prior even to coming into the administration, and doing what I was doing with my organization before, that just as much as the business owners have been struggling, the business resource service providers have also been challenged during this time and have had to figure out ways to deliver their services to business owners in the same way that business owners are trying to figure out how to get in front of their customers. So it's all the same kind of experience, but just different.
Well, we have a couple of more minutes now before the end of our session, and I just wanted to open it up to any closing remarks that just do a round robin. I know that Carissa had to leave us, but Analia and Natalie and Sharice, any closing remarks or things that you would like to share with our BWR Summit participants?
This is Natalie. I mean, I'm just driving home the business piece because that's my forte. That's what I do. And I know that's where we're also struggling. And we were struggling before the pandemic, and we're struggling now. I just really encourage people to learn more about the programs that exist. I encourage people to go to the centers that exist for them, and to connect with resources that are designed to support them. And also to know that this rescue plan that was recently passed was done so, and the folks that are working in this administration, which are reflected by the women that are on this call, are really doing this work with equity in mind. I think it is in the forefront. It's not in the background. It is in the forefront of all that we do and the way in which we are approaching service delivery of any government service to you all. And I think we have committed ourselves to that prior to coming into the administration. And I have been incredibly impressed with the women that I have seen the administration bring into the fold, because I saw them before they went in and they were still on the battleground.
All right. Thank you so much. Analia.
I think
Analilia, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Natalie said it perfectly. I think, we're here to serve. We're here to uplift. We want to amplify both the needs and opportunities, and then celebrate what's working so that it keeps going. Just deeply grateful for the work that you all are doing, and encourage you to continue to demand more from government. I mean, we are supposed to be serving, we are supposed to be addressing. That is the purpose. That is why we're here trying to act in the collective, and your demands, your concerns, your, focus and agitation is what's going to provide betterment for all of us, including, my own community, my sisters, my brothers, my children. And so I'm thankful to you, and keep pushing.
And Sharice.
Absolutely. I think my colleagues said it perfectly. We are all working hard on your behalf, and we want to hear from you. The last thing I think I want to mention is that you all know that the president announced that everyone will be eligible to sign up to get vaccinated starting May 1st. So I invite you to go online. We will have a new website that will be announced shortly. We'll have a call center to answer questions and help people find places in their communities that they can go to get vaccinated. We'll make sure that you all have that information. We'll make sure that Melanie has that information to get it out to all of you, but please, please, please find the facts. We need everyone to be vaccinated. We don't get out of this pandemic if everyone doesn't. So please just reach out to me if you have any questions. We are always happy to help. Thank you for all that you're doing, and thank you for having us today.
Thank you. And that's a great closing remark, that we all have to get out of this pandemic. So thank you so much, ladies, for taking time to join us. Thank you so much, ladies, for our summit attendees who came into the session. Thank you so much. And we hope you enjoy the rest of the session, ladies. And ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. And now at this time, we will have a 5-minute break. A 5-minute break. Please join us again in 5 minutes. Thank you so much, and we'll be with you shortly. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for rejoining us. We will now go into the Black Youth Vote Spill the Tea series, leveraging our youth voting nationally and in the states in 2021 and beyond. We have great moderators for this session. Our moderators are Leslie Dwight, representing the National Programs of Outreach from the NCBCP. Also, we have one of our co-moderator is Acacia Newsom, the BWR Project Assistant, also NCBCP. And our panelists for this session is Zakiya Brown, Coordinator from the Eastern Michigan and Metro Detroit, BYV, also the MCBCP. Our second panelist for today is Aisha Carson, serving as a state coordinator from the Mississippi BYV MCBCP. Also, as our third panelist, we have Tyranny Donnell, serving as our coordinator from South Alabama, the BYV. Also, our fourth panelist serving today is Latasha Hyatt, serving as our state coordinator from South Alabama, BYV, ACBCP. And also, our last panelist that will be serving with us today is Marion Harriel, who serves as the state coordinator for the Florida Black Youth Vote. Let us please welcome them at this time.
Well, welcome back, everyone. We are so excited to have you here this afternoon. Listen, this is our next installment of our series about spilling the tea. We have gathered our Black Youth Vote coordinators from across the nation to come and talk to you about what's going on in their state. It is so important that we know what is going on from a millennial perspective, from a Gen Z perspective, around organizing, around civic engagement, around voting, and they do so much more. But let me introduce to you my awesome, amazing, audacious co-host for today, Acacia Newsom. And I'm going to toss it over to Acacia to get us started with this exciting conversation.
Hey, everyone. So to get it started, we have an icebreaker question. So the question is, everyone is used to saying that we have next. Oh, I'm sorry. Quote, we got next. And so the question is, what does it mean to you when it says we got now? So I want to ask Aisha, what do you think when you hear we got now?
I think that a lot, I'll start off by saying this, especially as a Black woman organizer. I think for me personally, I know that I stand on the shoulders of such amazing women, amazing Black women who have been doing this work for a very, very long time and who have honestly sacrificed a lot to do this work, to stand in the gap for their community and to advocate for change. So when I think of the term we got next, I think about that in a positive way in terms of what does it look like for us to pick up that mantle? What does it look like for us to sacrifice in our own way to make sure that the generation behind us have access, equal access to the things that we know are going to propel our communities?
Maybe one more. So how about Ariel? What do you think when you hear we got now?
So what I think when I hear we got now, it's so funny because I grew up all the time just hearing to pass the torch, be prepared to get ready to handle the torch. But more like my mentor, the movement strategist, Ms. Deborah Scott, and she's learned from her mentor, Reverend Durley, is that we all have lights in us already. We already have the torch. It's up to us to light that fire. And so I think of that when you hear we got now, it's about having your torch and actually owning your torch like we're owning our power and lighting that torch and finding that flame within and not actually just waiting for somebody to pass it down to us.
So I'm just going to dive into our next question. And Zakiya, I'm going to be asking you. So one of the things that all of our voting campaigns have focused on were issues that were either on the ballot or either on the ballot or driving us to the polls. We know that many of our states are gearing up to for the state and local elections. So Zakiya, talk to us about some of the issues that you're continuing to advocate around this year.
So me and my other coordinator, Sequoia Howard, are really focused on the people right now and really rebranding ourselves, trying to get more people in our branch of BYV. And right now we have hosted a couple of text banking and making sure that people are aware of what's going on. And right now we're just focused on the community. So earlier this year, I think in January, we had a drive where we just gave people stuff that they need during this pandemic. And right now we're planning on a cleanup so we can just make sure our community is clean. And we're just trying to rebrand ourselves to make sure that people our age are knowing that they have a voice. So we're trying to get more people in the community. Like it's only 2 of us right now. So we're just trying to really rebrand ourselves and make sure that everybody is aware of their voice.
That's great. And so I want to toss this next question over to Aisha. Aisha, listen, you're in Mississippi and there has been a lot going on in Mississippi, right? You guys have dealt with ice storms and tornadoes and a water crisis. And so, you guys have been really boots on the ground, serving the community. And so my question for you is that in light of all of that, what are you all really focusing on in 2021?
Right. So even before all of that, and you're absolutely right, we have been, even in this pandemic, kind of hit by whammy after whammy and having to adjust our advocacy efforts. And this is our first year with Black Youth Votes being on the ground here in Mississippi. So really trying to establish ourselves among the young adults here. But also, we have tried, especially during this pandemic, to really ramp up our digital programming. And so we are really excited to continue to do that. We've been able to connect with some young influencers here in Mississippi to sort of broaden our reach, some artists and some rappers that are notable in the area, to really be able to connect with folks and connect with their followers and bring more folks into the BYB fam. But even apart from that, these crises, as we've been responding, as MSBWR has been responding, we have been able to directly connect with people and really talk about the importance, the why behind why civic engagement is so important. Especially when we see how leaders respond to these crises in our community. So really being able to connect the dots for people, particularly young people, how the government responds during crisis, how city leaders manage crisis are all directly tied to civic engagement. And that's our main message here in Mississippi right now. We have, luckily been in a position to be able to help a lot of people and pass out water and wash clothes for folks and all of those sorts of things, but really having relational conversations with people about what being in crisis means when it comes to our communities and how we have to vote in our best interest in order to make sure that we're protected during these times.
What I really like about what you said is that, you are establishing yourselves and you're using the voices of influencers, but you guys are also establishing yourselves as a chest of voices in your community. And I really love that. And I think that's really key and critical to some of the successes that you all have been having. Let me swing over to Latasha and Tierney. So why don't you guys talk to me? You guys are representing Alabama. What's going on in Alabama? Talk to me about some of the issues and how are you engaging young voters in Alabama?
Well, I'll go ahead and start and then Tierney can jump in. So basically the election was our first kind of splash into the water of establishing ourselves. And it was a very exciting and it was very stressful, but it was an exciting stress, if that even is a thing. We learned a lot. We were able to connect with our community. We were able to just establish ourselves as a force, however small we may be right now. And so right now we're just working on our delegation, trying to get different women from different counties. Also, me and Tierney just got a grant as far as justice reform. We just got a grant to film a documentary. So we'll be filming a documentary on the mental health of Black men coming out of the prison system with an emphasis on the Baptist Bottom. So that is something that we can hopefully match up, and it's through the Sardana Foundation. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but hopefully we can tag that to BYV and Black Women's Roundtable and kind of just pump it up a little bit more. And as far as we also want to start a conversation around marijuana legalization in the prison system. And so just starting that small, kind of risky conversation in the Bible Belt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
You know, we're just jumping on out there and just maybe making them see the truths behind it, the policies behind it, and how we can, as Black people, jump on that economic bandwagon that's coming as far as the marijuana industry, and how we can get our hands wet in there and our hands and feet wet in there. So that's basically what we're doing. But we are eating, sleeping, and breathing BWR. Our convener makes sure that that is the case, and so we love it, and we're just thankful for the opportunity to be a part of this.
Absolutely. Tierney, do you want to expand on some of the work that you guys are doing in Alabama, especially through BYV? That report right there, I wanted to shout, and I didn't have my clappers with me, but I'm excited for what you all are doing. Tierney, tell me more.
Yeah, so during the election season, we had a couple of block parties just to like engage the community. And we used those as opportunities to like spread knowledge on voter education. And going forward, we just want to continue to engage the youth and just to encourage them to use their voice and to even let them know that they have a voice and that their voice is powerful and that they can use their vote to make changes in their community that they may not have known that they could influence beforehand.
Absolutely. One of the things that my pastor always says is to be radical is to be relevant. And so I love the way that, you know, when you guys have talked strategy, you talk text banking, you talk block parties, you talk service, you guys have taken an approach that whatever it takes to get the job done, that's what you were doing to reach young adults and engage them in this process. So I am so excited about what you're doing and what is to come. Acacia?
So the next question, I'm going to Marion. So Marion, Florida BYV has an upcoming event that's happening on Monday. Tell us what the event is about and how that plays a role in voter engagement.
All right, greetings from the Sunshine State. So like Acacia said, this Monday, March 29th at 1 on our Facebook Live, Black Youth Vote Florida, we'll be having a She's Me, Nets Up, Boss Up, and a New Change Up panel discussion. So during our Nets Up panel discussion, we'll be talking about how to find a good mentor, also talking about entrepreneurship, how can you be your own boss, then also talking about social media influencing. Then we're going to switch it up and talking about boss up, talking about self-love, distinguishing the differences between arrogance and confidence, and just learning about how to love yourself and the importance of loving yourself before you can love someone else. Then we're going to switch it up to talk about the new change up, the female leaders. We look up to a lot of our seasoned folks like Miss Melanie Campbell, but we do have leaders like myself and Ariel and Miss Latasha that are the new change up. We are the we got now type of people. So we're going to talk about we're the leaders and what can we do as females to drive our community and drive our youth to understand that we have a voice. Here in the state of Florida, we're fighting with the House Bill 1, where our governor is trying to stop our voice from being spoken. He's having an anti-protesting bill because of our protesting that we had in the summer of 2020 about the injustice in this country. So we're going to be talking about that as well in our new change up, about how do we handle this situation. So y'all tune in on our Black Youth Vote Florida Facebook page on Monday, March 29th. I'll see y'all there.
Listen, I'm with it. I plan on being there. I plan on being in the house. Look, and I have all these hashtags popping off in my head. Hashtag don't mute me. Hashtag we got now. You know, come on, y'all. I am inspired and I am ready to get to work. I don't know about you, but listen, we have to take a break so that we can bring on our next panel to continue this conversation with our BYV leaders across the state. But we want to thank you for the amazing work that you all are doing. And thank you for being consistent and being passionate about not just doing the work, but reaching your arms both forward and back to pull, the people who are, your peers alongside of you, but you guys have already talked about pulling the next generation up with you. So thank you so much for, what you're doing, and keep up the good work. We'll be right back.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you very much. Now we will take a 5-minute break and we will reconvene as we will go back to table 2, dealing with We Got Now in the States. Welcome back, everyone. And now we are ready for our next segment of our summit, Black Youth Vote Power Table 2. We got now in the States, which is led by our co-moderators, Leslie Dwight, along with Acacia Newsom. Our panelists for this session, our first panelist, Mary Pack Hector, who serves as the state coordinator for the Georgia Black Youth Vote, GCPA. Our second panelist that is joining with us today is Sequoia Howard, who serves as a coordinator for the Eastern Michigan and Metro Detroit BYV coordinators. Our third panelist that is with us today is Ariel Singleton, who serves as the coordinator for the Georgia Black Youth Vote from Georgia Stand Up. And our fourth panelist joining us today is Jakayla Lipsey, who serves as the Kalamazoo, Michigan Black Youth Vote coordinator from Mothers of Hope. Ladies and gentlemen, we now turn it over to our moderators.
Well, welcome back, everyone. We have an additional set of our Black Youth Vote coordinators who are going to help us further this conversation. And ladies, before we get started in our questions, I have an icebreaker. I have a question. This is a rapid fire question. I'm going to say a word and you're going to tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready? Okay. Sequoia, you're going to go first. What do you think of when I say hope?
Hope is like a light almost. Like it gives you light. I feel like that's what hope is.
Hope is light. I like it. I like it. Jakayla, what do you think of when I say justice?
I think I would say free.
Okay. All right, Mary Pat, what do you think of when I say equality? Unmute yourself, Mary Pat.
Of course, I would be the one. I would think of just opportunities and possibilities.
Absolutely. And Ariel, what do you think of when I say equity?
When I think of when you say equity, it's just that everybody getting exactly what they need tailored to them.
Absolutely. I like the way you all think. So let's talk about not just about what you think, but let's talk about what you do, how you all turn thoughts into actions. And so we're going to start with Georgia because coming out of 2020, all eyes were on Georgia. Into 2021, all eyes are still on Georgia. There's a lot going on in that state. So I'm going to talk to you, Mary Pat. Tell us first, what are some of your recent organizing efforts because of all that's going on in Georgia? Talk to us about some of your organizing efforts that are underway right now.
Absolutely. So just getting students to talk about their experience and why we need, absentee voting, which you shouldn't have to do, right? Why you need drop boxes, why you need just an equal access, an opportunity to vote. And really just beyond that, trying to educate people on what's happening. So many people thought like with the election that us just turning up in January and November was enough. But, we have to begin to think about local politics. And while, our Senate, most of our Congress might, be Democratic, we do have, on a local level, even though this is a nonpartisan organization, right? But, when you think about just politics, things are different on the local level than they may be at the state and federal level. And so really just talking to them about what's happening in the state of Georgia, because so many people don't know, especially young people, and the fact that these particular voter suppression measures are mainly going to impact people of color and young voters.
Thank you for that. Ariel, one of the things that I think has been really key to what you all have been doing is as you've been lifting up some of the issues in Georgia, you guys have been doing some coalition building. So talk to me about how you've been going around about that work and just kind of who have you been targeting in terms of being able to build your coalition to carry your cause?
So as you know, in this work, it's not just about one organization or one person doing the job. We're all working together for this common cause. Right now in Georgia, we're dealing with putting pressure on corporate businesses and big money businesses that are hindering our votes, and that we need them to stand with us, stand with the people that are putting dollars in your community. So that's how we're kind of building our coalition specifically right now, building them with different organizations like Black Voters Matters, Protect the Vote, GA, NAACP, but all having that one common goal of wanting to see that, even having faith leaders and everything come out. And we're building a plan so that we're not getting tired. We're supporting each other. Everybody is out there, so that not only that, once you see somebody from the coalition every day. So you're going to get that impact, whether it's somebody from Georgia Stand Up, BYV, or another organization, you're going to see somebody every day. And so just having that communication and building those coalitions together to see what each team needs and support, and actually playing a role in seeing what roles need to be done and what roles need to be taken care of.
Sure. And so this question goes to both of you all. You all have been doing work around voter suppression, but what other areas are you all focusing on?
So we're focusing on not only voter suppression, but how that also trickles down to you when it comes to housing equity, your self-care, transit equity, when it comes to college students and education, and making sure that you have what you need as far as in your student loans, and having that equal opportunity resources within the community. We've been able to put up resource banks and pantries around city. We put one of the first ones in front of our building in our area. But these things is actually putting back in the community what we actually, what the community is searching for and what the community is needing at the moment.
Thanks. Mary Pat, you guys have some other things?
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking about really, Ariel briefly noted students and college affordability. So we've had the opportunity to sit in on multiple Department of Education and White House meetings to talk about college affordability and the possibility in which we've seen student loan forgiveness, but that was literally just a tiny percentage of what we need to see here in this country right now. And so we've been blessed to be able to work with the administration with that. But beyond that, just continuing to ensure that young people are getting registered to vote. Elections don't just happen in November, right? Elections are all year round. And so ensuring that young people and people of color are continually getting access to the ballot. Oh, and then lastly, ensuring that young people have an opportunity to start their businesses. So with the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, we've partnered with some elected officials here in Metro Atlanta to ensure that we can get young people business licenses so that they can sell water without being harassed by the police and other items to be successful.
Absolutely. Acacia?
So the next question I'm going to ask to Jakayla. So we are still in the middle of a pandemic, and a lot of people are looking for vaccines. Talk to us about some of the work BYV has been doing around making sure communities have access to vaccines. Also share with us how you use your community engagement as a part of your overall voter engagement strategy.
Okay, so yes, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, we actually ended up vaccinating about 1,300 people. We had a vaccination site at Mothers of Hope. Our target was to vaccinate those who were at risk in the urban communities, who maybe had troubles going to these other vaccine sites. We mainly try to target our younger parents like me. I did go get my vaccine. Our Black and Hispanics. And we also have been trying to get our college students to get vaccinated, especially those who are still working during this time. So we, a lot of people don't have technology. We found that as an issue while trying to, let people be aware, hey, we're doing these vaccines, come down and get one. So we had to go door to door. We sent out text messages, emails, and just making people aware. We actually had a panel with our Black doctors explaining, the Moderna, what it is. So yeah, we've been doing a lot of work in the community, how Black Youth Vote Kalamazoo engages with their community. We've been trying to get, recruit people, educate people on equality and injustice work. We're trying to get people to serve on these these boards, that need our faces. We are also doing online counseling sessions during the pandemic. It could take a toll on our mental, for real. So yeah, going forward from this, I think we'll still use the same techniques and the same tactics as we did before, because COVID is still on the rise, especially in Michigan and Kalamazoo itself, so yeah.
That's amazing. I like your multi-pronged approach. I like, how you're dealing with the physical and you're dealing with the mental health and you're dealing with, the civic engagement. You have this holistic approach to engaging your young adult voters and just your community at large. And I think that's excellent work. So congratulations, BYV Kalamazoo. But we're going to stay in Michigan and we're going to come on over and talk to Sequoia. Sequoia, I want you to talk to us a little bit about, the work that you're continuing to do, because you take a little bit of a different approach in terms of how you're engaging youth and young adults in your area. So talk to us about how do you engage, young voters, that young voting population in your area, and why is that important?
So in the Pontiac area, we realized after the presidential election, our work didn't stop. We are focused more on outreach and educating. We are starting to build trainings with all teens up to age 20 or 21. So we can continue to educate them more about demographics and continue to engage with young people. This is important because a lot of young Black people, they don't get a lot of education about politics. So we just wanted to make sure that they know, just like we know more about Michigan and the United States politics.
Perfect. Can you just tell us about one event that you did that you thought went really well?
Well, like Zakiya said, one of the only events that we really did was the MLK Day giveaway, and it went really well. Like, we had more families than expected, but starting next week, we wanted to do more trainings with the younger people too.
Absolutely. Equip them and train them, and let's get folks engaged. Well, listen, you all have heard from our BYV coordinators from around the states, and I hope that you're co-signing on the fact with me that they are doing amazing work. They are getting the job done. They are leveraging their power around their voting. They understand that voting is not just for a season, but it's ongoing work. So at this point, before we say goodbye, I want to turn it over to our esteemed CEO, Melanie Campbell.
Well, let me do this. Can we do this? Awesome job. Awesome stars job. Thank you, Leslie, and thank you, Acacia, for facilitating this conversation, and Ariel, and Sequoia, and Jakayla, and Mary Pat. Did I miss anybody? I think those you always bringing it, and so I just want to come on and say thank you all for having this conversation and representing. I know that I've seen some of the work that y'all been doing since last year, and we feel like we're in perpetual campaign mode. So I just want to say thank you for your leadership, and this was, I think, the best way to close out day one of the Black Women's Roundtable Women of Power National Summit. So I just wanted to say thank you all for that. And I want to thank all of our speakers today, and all of the 1,045 sisters who are registered for this summit. We might just turn around and triple this thing about our average attendee, which is usually around 500. So we want to thank you all. I do want to say we know we had some technical challenges today, and so you all for hanging in there with us. So we were going to work through some of that. We had some course correction on some of the music and things like that, but bear with us and we'll work out the kinks. And in that regard, we want to make sure that everyone knows that tomorrow we will be is all about public policy and education day. So the first half of the day we won't be online, but our state Black Women's Roundtable leaders and networks in the states will be actually having meetings with their congressional leaders tomorrow. We normally would be on Capitol Hill if it was not for COVID. So what we decided, working with our leaders in the states and others, and our national policy network table, is that we still need to meet, and Congress people are meeting via Zoom just like we're doing today. So that's going on tomorrow. They'll be taking the public policy agenda that I mentioned earlier. We will make sure that we will get a copy of that for everyone that's registered, to share that with you so that you would know what the Black Women's Roundtable's national policy issues are all about. But tomorrow at 12 noon, we will be back online for our congressional virtual briefing and a National Black Women Policy Champions Roundtable. So check us out from 12 to 1:30 for that. And then we will culminate tomorrow with the release of our 8th annual Black Women's Roundtable Report, Black Women in the U.S. and Key States, that's focusing on what? Rebuilding hope, justice, equity, and equality in the midst of a pandemic and new political, racial, and social justice era. And we're excited to have that released. And we thank our co-editors this year, Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver and Dr. Elsie Scott, and our sister Jocelyn Tate. Will be leading that conversation to find out. And we've got some dynamic, many of you out there and who are also speaking were contributors this year. And we thank you for that. And so we want to make sure we highlight that tomorrow. And then the last and not least, I want to say that if folks, I know, as I said earlier, Hoover tried to navigate that. And so our technical team will ask that I say for you to if you haven't checked technical challenges, they're going to talk on the community. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you all can hear me. The community area after this, inside of the conference area, to ask questions on the chat in there and try to help folks if you're having some navigation issues. Also, we'll send out, you will get an email too, just for extra instructions. So we want to make sure you enjoy this conference and that technology is not a blocker for that. And so we thank you again, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining our 10th annual Black Women's Roundtable, Women of Power Virtual National Summit. This now concludes day one. Have a safe and enjoyable evening.